When I checked the poll from last episode, it looks like most of you guys wanted to see me build a sawmill. So, we are building a viaduct. Now you may be wondering, Ads, why are you building a viaduct? Well, I found this natural pool on the top of the hill. It's a natural source of water. Maybe there's a spring that somehow feeds all the way up to the top of the hill. Who knows? Either way, when water falls down because of gravity, it releases energy. Energy which we can harness to power a sawmill. So once we have some parts of the viaduct in place here, we will commence building a sawmill. Now the viaduct itself is going to be directing the water onto a water wheel, which will then power the machinery in the sawmill. It also has a bit of a runoff, which is feeding a farm. As it's in the same area as the farm, it makes sense to have some of the excess water going somewhere to be reused and repurposed, essentially. The viaduct itself is mainly made out of stone, the stone being the channel material. There's also some stone brick being used as supports. And it's designed around the properties of water in Minecraft, so water can travel 8 blocks, including the source or where it appears on that area, essentially, before running out. So each section is 7 blocks long, allowing the 8th block for the water to run off and down into the next section and start the next section of water. The water wheel itself, I believe, is called a breasted water wheel. You can either have a water wheel where the water just essentially flows directly underneath the water wheel, just powering it from the bottom, or have it come higher up on the water wheel and essentially spin the water wheel by falling down. That design is called a breasted, I believe a breasted or an upper water wheel. I think the names can be used interchangeably. I don't know, I'm not a water wheel expert. What we have here now, we have the viaduct feeding into the water wheel, feeding into the mechanism. On the other side of the water mill, we have an outlet which is feeding an expanded farm, so we've basically tripled our wheat production, which is good. Suitable for a town expansion. We got a little bit of a walkway going up here. This is just temporary, these items here. But now we're going to have to consider how the mechanism interacts with the actual sawmill to make a sawmill. So I've got some more iron blocks here. I'm unsure how we want these two gears to interact. We can either do another gear that's kind of offset from this one. So it's going to be the shaft would end up, or that would be there, and then the shaft would be the next block over. We could do it so that mechanism is built one across, or we could do it so it's offset either vertically or horizontally. The only real way that we're going to be able to see what we want is by building it. So, let's build it. If we do... So this is it being direct. Hooked on there as is. We're only really going to be seeing this mechanism from this ground area here. It'll be hidden behind a wall from upstairs. That's not too bad, but I don't think it gives the impression of gears. I think it loses something when these two are touching on the corners there. So, let's clamber back up here. And we'll move all of the gear mechanism down one to see how we like that. So that is how it would look there, which I think works. I think if we offset it horizontally, it's going to bring it too far away from the wall. It's not going to be like nice and tucked in. And if we offset it horizontally this way, so this block is fitting into this corner, then again we'll have that problem of everything kind of touching and just merging into one big block of iron. So I think this is going to work. This is going to come down a little ways here. And we're going to need to decide where we want the floor of this area to be and where we want the actual sawmill part of this room to be. So I think we'll have the floor at this height here. Just kind of breaks it up a little bit. We've got the nice entry coming up from here. And also leads up towards the mechanisms up there. Do we want this to be the cutting floor height as well? Or do we want the cutting floor height to be slightly lower? And this to be some kind of office space or maybe a storage space, some kind of entryway. Regardless, I think maybe yes. Okay, so we're going to change this out for oak. That just adds a bit of cohesiveness between these two spaces. So I've lowered the gear assembly at the bottom here into this little pit. Just offers another bit of height differential, something a bit more of interest as well. On the third gear, the last gear here, what I've done is added essentially a crankshaft. So it's it has a bit of a kink in it, and that's where the blade sits on. So the blade will basically just travel up and down, up and down, up and down. This is where the wood will be ingested. The logs will be ingested, and then on the other side here, the cut wood would be ejected. So we just need to fill in those areas, make the channels for that, do obviously the walls and stonework around the building, but pretty much this is nearing a state of essentially completion from a design perspective. So the reason I've gone with a pit here is that back when people were first cutting logs and doing sawmills, one of the most efficient ways was to have a long vertical saw, have one person basically under the log, and one person above the log. And the person above the log would be the saw master or whatever, and the person below the log would be in what's called the saw pit. And between them they would move the saw up and down, cutting the log. Then that got changed to a mechanical one-person operation, and then eventually into a water-powered operation, which is now an electronic-powered operation, or digital fancy stuff. But yes, that's what I'm imagining is this building here. It's basically this was a saw pit. It would have been much smaller back in the day, but then they expanded it to fit in the crankshaft. I mean, we can definitely shrink it down on some of these edges here, but they expanded it sideways a little bit to probably fit in the crankshaft. But essentially, this is the old saw pit from back when it was a completely manual operation. So I think our saw pit here is basically going to outline the majority of the building. Maybe it was just expanded to reach all the foundation walls, perhaps. So we're going to have the building coming out along here like so. We do need an outer facade along here. And I'm already out of stone. Man, I'm using so much stone, it's ridiculous. It really is. But we're probably going to make the majority of the actual building itself, the walls, out of wood again, as wood is a commonly used material that we enjoy so much. I think we might make a little cutout of something here. We have this little area which we could use as an indent for something, so we might take advantage of that and put something there. And we do need to frame the entrance for the wood. So the wood will essentially be shunted in through this area here. We'll probably build some kind of ramp feeding up to it. We also have a bit of a gangway above it, so you can kind of guide the wood in, use a hook if you need to realign it or something. You know, just drag it around a little bit. So we actually have something that is beginning to resemble a building here. So instead of the water wheel on the side, we have this wall which we're going to cut a window into eventually. this is going to be a nice gradual ramp to feed the logs into. We've got our logs and our cutting, our gearing mechanism there, and the walls on the outside, just adding a roof to it at the moment to get a whole finalized shape going on. We may have to do something with this path to blend it in with the roof a little better, but it's also fun that it gives access to the roof. It's a bit of a parkour kind of element that you can incorporate. You can start running on the rooftops and stuff like that. A bit of fun, you know. It's exciting. But a nice, simple, just gabled roof here that we're doing to span the entire building. Well, I just did a whole segment where we died twice and everything else went wrong, and you're never going to see it because I forgot to hit record. Anyway, our sawmill here is nearing completion. I just have a few more touches to do off camera, but we'll get the episode finished here so I can actually get it rendered and uploaded and all that kind of good stuff. So we've got two big windows here which aren't centered to the roof, but they are centered to the building itself. So that should look okay. Got our crank system and all the other good stuff. The mechanism coming down the wall here. Got our logs being sawed. We have access down to the gearing down here if we ever need access to that. So we've got our crank there. This is all going to be polished andesite eventually. Then out here we have access back to the town. Just breaks up this wall slightly, just something to do with that little indent. It could be an emergency exit, or, you know, just a thing that exists for whatever particular reason. Got this little balcony area that you can manhandle the logs by. You can kind of lift them up if you need to move them across a little bit. Yeah, it's definitely working. Well, it looks good, I think. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. But that is going to do it for this episode of Mindcrack. I would like to thank you guys very much for watching, and I shall see you all in the next episode.